Hello, everybody, and welcome along to the SimNews.TV Supercup show, where we take a look at the action within the GPVWC Supercup from the previous week and go through it, look at the ups and downs, the drivers who stood out, and a couple of other things along the way as well. So, in case you're not familiar, this is the show about the GPVWC Supercup, one of the series in their career ladder, which comprises the Formula Challenge, Supercup, and Super League, with Super League being the top ladder, and Formula Challenge the entry level. Supercup has a two-race format with a sprint race and a feature race, so challenge for the drivers in that sense, because varying race lengths means strategies involved. Mandatory pit stop as well in the feature race, so there was even more strategy there as to when you're going to take it. And, well, Supercup, the proving ground for drivers that want to go to Super League. Talent has been scouted from there before, and there's been some top drivers race in it. So you're bound to get great action in Supercup. I'm Josh Anderson, and alongside me today for the first episode of the Supercup show is none other than Mike Pitman.
Hello, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on board with us, Mike. So, Supercup then. Let's just talk about Supercup in general for a bit, because we know it's such an important series to the career ladder, because, you know, it is the talent bed for Super League, mainly. A lot of drivers from Supercup who have done well have then gone up to have great Supercup careers too.
On to Super League careers. I mean, it's proving ground, really. It's the last chance for even cars, which should be said, compared to Super League. So this is the real chance we actually see the drivers actually going at it. And it's what you see on track, and what you see in the races is, you know, driver skill in the main. So it really is a great proving ground. I know I look down to it and see what drivers are coming up. Quite a lot of these drivers have third drives or reserve drives with a Super League team as well, potentially. So they might have a bit. You might have seen them in the Super League if you've been watching that show. Some of the names might crop up as well, and they might do throughout the year.
Yeah, a lot of the big names have gone up to Super League and then obviously succeeded as well. You know, a lot of hot Supercup drivers, you know, do, as you say, rightfully say, have drives with Supercup Super League teams in reserve capacities. So, you know, this sort of talent is definitely being noticed.
Yeah, how can it not? I mean, if you're top of the Supercup table here, we've seen some fantastic drivers in the past winning this series as well. It's been quite a challenge of champions when you look back. I mean, we had some people may know Lars Brugman won it last year. We've had Ruud Heesterbeek, Philip Pushka, who went on to be a Super League champion. He won it as well. Peter Kassa, even further back, if you want to go out there. Bart de Vos, people like that. They've all won this series as drivers. You know, some of them many years ago now, but nonetheless, you know, within the past 5-6 years there, and have either gone on to Super League or into other leagues and other sim racing to do well there as well. So it's been a good proving ground, and it's a real competitive league as well. You don't just get one or two drivers running off into the distance here. This is very even all the way down the field.
And as you rightfully say, there's been a lot of drivers who've come through Supercup and had, you know, got themselves Super League seats. Most notably, Storm Racing Team, both McNaughton and Gagzella came through Supercup and now are in Super League as drivers as well. And then you look at the likes of Bristol Cabby, who's, you know, driving for Vodbull Racing, had a great season last year with Walk Racing in Supercup. Now I find himself with the top team as well.
Yeah, he was at Street Fighter last year, but walked the year before. Yeah, people like that. I mean, Storm that you highlighted there, actually probably one of the ones to show for the whole ladder itself. They actually did Formula Challenge the year before as well. So they worked all the way up through the ladder that way. And there's some other teams as well that we see here now that are probably wanting to get themselves into Super League in the coming years.
Yeah, so, you know, looking at the current crop of teams, speaking of them, you know, you've got the likes of Evolution Motorsports now who are leading the championship charts, but they're only very closely followed by Mederick and Zederick. So there's a lot of teams, as you rightfully say, could go on to have Super League careers. And, well, Zederick Racing only got promoted this year, and they're already third.
Well, yeah, it shows it's that even, actually. If you've got a good team and you've got a good manager and you can get a good couple of drivers together. You know, Zederick there have got two experience. They may be a new team into that series, but they've got two drivers there who have driven this series before for a couple of years, so they've got the experience in there, rather than just being a brand new team to the league, for example. You don't often get that into Super Cup. That's where sort of everyone's already done a year in Formula Challenge in the main, and in doing so, they've sort of built themselves up and show that experience a little bit already. Is it working through the standings, do we reckon, there? I know you just hinted at them.
Well, it might be worth it indeed. Of course, Evolution Motorsports leading the championship as it stands on 138 points. Just 1 point separates them from Measuric Racing. They're on 137. And then obviously Zederick third on 131 points. It's quite a gap then to Multiforce GP in fourth place. Even though Alex Siebel has got 3 wins out of 4 races competed, they're on 93 points and 38 behind Zederick. Then he goes down to Deltec Racing. They're one of the most highly tipped teams to possibly be championship contenders, but Stefan Ruelt and James Johnson only 5th in the standings on 77 points. So again, they're probably a team that had a bit more of a struggle.
Yeah, I mean that's a newly promoted team. So I suppose, but they're still sitting there in 5th. I mean, we're talking here. It's still early season. We're only 3 rounds in, so it's 6 races for this. But even only being in their case, what are they, 60 points behind? That's still doable. You know, we're talking each driver's got potential 2 wins per race weekend. So that's, you know, a massive haul of points. You only need one weekend of a couple of DNFs or something, and you can plummet down that table. So Deltec, though, they have got 2 great drivers there who fought for the Formula Challenge title last year, and I think, you know, they've still got a couple of podiums and stuff, but they're obviously learning. And I'd imagine, to be honest, James Johnson probably is very disappointed in his predicament that he finds himself in so far, with quite a few DNFs to his name. It's not very JJ like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally hoping they can get themselves back on the table because they are, as you say, a very, very capable team with 2 fantastic drivers. And I feel they really should be higher up the table on that. And I know they've got the talent to. So we'll see if they do. But they're a whole 15 points ahead of Epic Racing Team, another new team to the Supercup this year. Jeffrey Fournier having got a podium in the very first race in Australia. They're on 62 points as it stands. Then you have to go 5 points back to find TG Racing with Boyer Milan and Edgar Garith there in 7th place, and Drake Racing 8 points behind, and in P8 actually, so late all round for them. And Antonio Haranovic getting a podium again in Australia. Haranovic with that podium, but then not really following it up afterwards with the 21st in China.
Well, you look at Australia, he did quite well. It was 5th and 3rd, and then he's been solid in Russia and an 8th and a 4th. That's pretty good going. It's only China that just obviously either wasn't his track or just. I mean, the problem he had is he actually DNFs in race 1, which when you're then talking the second race is the grid effectively from the first race with the reverse at the front. But if you've DNF'd, you're starting right at the back, and that's a massive ask. Particularly, you can be potentially mixed up in all other instances, and you can't necessarily get your rhythm right. You're driving around drivers you're not so used to, whereas he's been driving in the top 10 previously. So it's probably a bit of a shock to the system for him a little bit there. But I think he'll be back to top 5 or 6 again next time out. He's a good driver. It's that, you know, that team is probably lower than it deserves to be slightly at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if Drake can get themselves back to the order. And of course, the podium is very impressive in its own right. But yeah, we'll see how Drake go. Our racing team short on 9th behind on 40 points with the brothers Batala, as it were. Gerard and Edward doing a pretty solid season so far. 40 points is very respectable indeed. And then you've got Satellite Racing in 10th place on 34 points with and they've already had 3 drivers this season with obviously Matt Strand having taken the first 2 races and then not competing in China. TJ Horsheimer only competed in Australia and China, and then they've got Ray Kilk as well, making his return to GPVWC at Russia, but then not racing at China either. So only 1 car outing in China, and already they've gone through 3 drivers, so maybe problems there?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a question mark there over that those 3 drivers separately have all got brilliant talent, and racing real life in some cases, but they just I don't know whether they're not prepared or they weren't dedicated to it or other issues have happened off track. But yeah, looking at the moment, we don't know who's turning up the next round, and that says a lot in itself. In that if you don't know who's turning up, and do they know who's turning up? Maybe not at this stage, and that would be a worry if I was a fan of Satellite.
What could be even more worrying is this is not a knock on his talent, but Horsheimer seems to have found it quite difficult to adapt to Supercup. He's not finished any of the 4 races he's competed in so far.
No, not so far. It's a steep learning curve for him. He's new to the area again. He's much more of a tin top driver as far as I'm aware. So some people take a little bit of time to adjust, but the talent is there from other leagues. He's good friends with Matt Strand as well, so I'm sure together they'd work very well. It's a shame to see that team where it is, considering where it's been in the past, but I'm sure it'll get back up there. They just need to. They have got a wealth of drivers they could pull from other leagues to come in.
Yeah, they do have a wealth of drivers, so hopefully we'll see them back to 2 cars every round very soon. They are still 23 points ahead of ST Racing, though, who are in 11th place. And, they've only missed 1 round with 1 car. They've managed to get to races They managed to get every other race to 2 cars so far this season, but they've had 4 drivers. Dominic Foster and Mark Fuller took the opening round. Before then, it was just Michael Barnard, again another name we haven't seen for a while, in Russia. And then they had the team of Fuller and De Vries, Gerrit that is, not Sven, at China. So maybe a couple of problems there, but at least they're getting 2 cars for every event. And then you look at Hinz Motorsport in 12th place. They've missed a couple of races as well. Jordan Weeks didn't start in Russia, and Sandy Machoda only did 1 race as well. But then they have Alexander van der Woude and Jordan Weeks returning for China. So get a bit of a mixed bag there.
Hinz, Weeks is one of those where he's got such talent. He could be fighting for the driver's title in theory. We've seen him in Super League. We've seen him doing very well. He's over in iRacing as well. But he does have the tendency to DNF. So it is one of those, you get it all or you get nothing with Jordan. It's quite exciting to watch because you never quite know what's going on, particularly when he takes a pit lane. But other than that, he's a very interesting driver. And yeah, the team itself, the team's down this end, when you're talking 11th, 12th, 13th, there's a little bit there of being unlucky with their driver choices, or dare I say it, slight mismanagement on the driver's side. But that's, it's early days. Some of these teams, Hinz, quite new to the league as well. As a team, so I'm sure they'll come round.
Yeah, I'm sure they will do. I mean, if he can get the right drivers, can Thomas Hinz as the team manager, they can be a very capable team. But, the talent pool so limited in some places because everyone wants, the drivers, and it can be difficult to recruit drivers at times. I've found that firsthand, but still, hopefully they'll be able to get themselves up the order. Though they aren't last, that does fall to Cosmo Motorsport, unfortunately, who in their debut Supercup season are last with 4 points. Although those points are starting to come because Andreas Pestov's got a brilliant 12th in China, and he hadn't scored before that, but he just seemed to have the race that worked for him.
That's a slightly different kettle of fish altogether, because that is where you've got the drivers and they're turning up to each race, so they're just not getting the points. So that's a well-run outfit. So I presume that when they maybe they need a bit more testing time together, maybe they just need to find something in that setup, or I'm sure that will come. Particularly some of these drivers driven FC last year, so it's a step up for them as well. So it's give them a bit of time, and I'm sure it'll all come around again.
Yeah, well, I think obviously they've got 2 dependable drivers, so I think that might be about to go up to 3 by the end of the next race because I am the manager of Cosmo Motorsport myself, and unfortunately Ben Willis I don't think is going to be continuing in Supercup after China. So driver wise, it's possible that we might be promoting Patrick Vandermuller from his reserve capacity into a race seat, but obviously that depends on whether he wants it. But Willis in his own right, even though he's not going to be competing in Supercup after China, it's still a very dependable driver, and obviously Cosmo going for reliability over outright pace.
Yeah, which over the course of a season is definitely a good choice. Willis he's driven the last Super League race for Green Stripes, and he might be doing it again for all I hear. So he has got the talent to be up there. And if you're doing Super League and you're finishing races, then you've definitely got the talent to be in here. It is such a competitive field, though, that's why they find themselves right down there at the bottom of the pack at the moment. And I hope for Cosmo's sake that actually they don't lose him, because finding competitive drivers in the middle of the season is quite rare. The way the ladder works, in that if you were a Supercup team, you'd normally look down to Formula Challenge. You go, right, I want to pick off some of the, promote these drivers. But the longer the season goes on, they're in title battles themselves. And they're like thinking, well, actually, I'd like to get the title at this level and then move up the year after, rather than jumping in now when the season's already, potentially 3-4 rounds in, thinking, well, I'm only making up numbers at that stage, whereas I could be fighting for titles down there. So it's an interest factor for certain drivers. If they want to get to Super League, they might want to make the jump now and save themselves effectively a year, or they might decide to stick it out and go for titles and silverware and exciting things like that in Super Formula Challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a decision to make, but we'll see how the season goes for obviously the Cosmos, see if they can get themselves up the order a bit, because to finish last in the first Supercup season wouldn't be great, but, at the same time, it is a steep learning curve, and, well, we'll see how they get on. So we've talked about the teams. Now let's talk about the drivers, because that in itself is an interesting battle. Obviously, we know the teams have drivers that help with the points totals, but each driver wants to go for the championship in their own right as well, and Jason Muscat leading that on 92 points coming out of China, followed by Dino Paolini on 90, Dennis Jordan on 86, and Alex Siebel on 84. So a very, very tight run contest because the top four separated by 8 points.
Oh, it's fantastic at this stage of the season. I mean, you could argue that Alex Siebel didn't do round one, so maybe he could be leading by now if he'd had the same level of. But then again, maybe he was just very prepared for Russia because he didn't do Australia. I don't know. We shall see as the season progresses. We do find with this championship to win the championship is all down to your race twos, because you normally find that race one, because the qualifying order sort of sorts itself out, you do find the fastest are there. You normally find that the fastest people are at the top for race one. It just sort of casually works that way. We'll get a better picture as the season progresses. But race two, when you're having to get a reverse grid formation involved and having to battle your way back through, that's where you really find the champions.
It says a lot as well for Alex Siebel. He didn't take part in Australia at all, but out of the 4 Supercup races he's done, he's won 3 of them.
Oh, absolutely. It does remind me of Ranieri a few years ago when he came in late and then started just winning races after races. But, shout out to Muscat. I must say he's won 2 races already. He's got, he's not finished outside the top 8 yet, and that was the first race. I mean, remember, he's actually driving for he has his own team, but he's driving for a different team. So I wonder if he'll regret that decision later in the year. But he's, nonetheless, he's an experienced guy. He's got links to Super League already, so and has driven there in the past. So I'm sure he'll be right up there come the end of the year as well. Paolini and Jordan were the 2 that at the start of the season I was watching quite heavily. Being a Super League manager, they're the sort of 2 that you go, oh, that I think they could be the sort of next talent moving up. And they're sort of linked to Super League teams already to a degree, but we've seen them in other series, in the independent ones and last year as well, doing very well. And they've done as expected, really. I'd imagine Paolini's probably kicking himself. He hasn't quite got a win yet, but he's had 3 podiums. And Jordan will be knocking on the door Dennis Jordan will be knocking on the door as well, very soon, I'm sure. But even though those 4 there, you've obviously got Stefan as well, just after in 5th. I mean, he's still, he'd arguably still win that title battle.
Yeah, lots of drivers still in the title battle indeed, and even guys further down the order like Stefan Ruhl in P5 were, are seriously up there. 12 points behind Siebel on 72 points he is, but still very much within the shout. And then you got Jeffrey Fournier as well on 53 points, 19 points down on Ruhl, but still, a very formidable driver in his own right. Tobias Politek, who took the very first win of the seasons on 52 points, just 1 behind Fournier. Then it's Holanovic on 48. Then Wupke Hoekstra, 9th in the standings on 47 points. Then Dawe Tapper rounding out the top 10 on 39. And you got to mention the likes of Hoekstra and Politek as well. Haven't had great races, recently, but Wupke with the race 1 in Russia and Tobias winning the very first race of the season, they can have the moments.
Oh, absolutely. You do find it's after 3 races we're getting a bit of a picture now. We do find though that some drivers have sort of specialist circuits and can be absolutely fantastic for them, or they may have just had more time to test for that particular track. You do find that in Australia, an awful lot of drivers have a lot of time to test for that because it's the first race of the season. But they've really shown to me already. I'm like, oh, actually, who I didn't know who Tobias was, to be honest, at that point. Really, I hadn't really followed his career, but now I do. And that's down to myself. But even then you say he hasn't done very well recently. He's still got 2 top 10 finishes in China. That's nothing to nothing not to shout home about. Just because we expect him to win because he won the first round doesn't mean he's doing a poor job.
Yeah, I mean, he can be proud of those for sure. Top 10 Supercup aren't easy to come by, and they can be very proud of those. And for sure, the likes of boy Milan Kisby as well. Milan, a very capable driver in his own right, and 29 points in the season so far, and 11th place in standings. And Edgar Reith in 12th, only 1 non-point scoring finish so far for him as well, but 28 points in 12th he'll still be happy with. Then the first of the brothers Patala, Gerard in 13th on 23 points, followed by Wright Kilt making his return to Supercup in 14th in standings moment, although he's only done 1 race. He's got 20 points. Then it's Edward Batala in 15th place on 17, and then 3 points back is Matt Strand, who didn't race in China but still on 14 points. Then Michael Barnard, having only raced at Russia, is in 17th on 9, and then we have actually 3 drivers on 9 points. Carlos Fernandez is the second in 18th place, but Barnard's better finishes put him ahead. And again, with Rob Mason, Fernandez beat him on finishes, but Mason has 9 points in 19th place. And then reigning Formula Challenge champion James Johnson down in 20th place. And those 3 DNFs going to be hurting him. Only 5 points for Johnson, but we saw a very similar thing with Emmanuel Gaxella when he came up from Formula Challenge. It can be quite a steep learning curve.
Yeah, it can, and it's just, as I say, it's that race 1 DNFs is what really hurts you, because it hurts you round 2 as well. But I don't know, with James, I always thought that Supercup cars would suit him better than Formula Challenge cars. Just his driving style and his endurance levels with it. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure that will come back to him during the season. He's one of those drivers that can have amazing races, and he's a very passionate guy as well. So I'm sure he won't be happy, particularly being quite heavily beaten by his teammate at the moment. He will not be a happy chappy in that car.
Yeah, he won't be particularly happy, but still room for improvement for Johnson. But let's see if he can. It would be really good to see him back up the order. So continuing on then, Andres Pestov's 21st place on 4 points. That point score at Russia really helping his championship bid. And then Alexander van der Woude, 22nd, having only done Russia. He's on 4 as well, but Pestov's 12 puts him ahead. Then Sandeep Chowda, 23rd, having only done 2 races this season, 1 in Australia and 1 in Russia. Then Gerrit de Vries, again, a China-only sort of racer, in 24th place and 2 points. Then Matthias Canapino, final of the point scorers, in 25th place and just the 1 point scored in China. Gerrit de Vries, his point score at China, even though this is only his first race, he's already starting to prove himself.
Yeah, he's becoming quite a solid driver, really, quite a reliable guy. I think he'd quite happily say himself he's not up there to win races at the moment. But if he can keep plugging away some points and moving on up that table and helping his team out, that's all they're after, really. And he's learning his racecraft. I remember when he first came in, he was right near the back every time. So the fact he's scoring points now, he's moved on quite a bit, and I'm sure over the coming years he'll move on even more. Some people, everyone learns at different paces. Some people hit the ground running and win round 1. Other people take nearly the whole season and only will really come to fruition in 2018. Slow burners, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, hopefully they can get themselves back into, point scoring. Well, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how Gerrit develops out the season, and, the likes of his sort of runners and riders like near him in the championship standings as well. Gerrit has come on a lot, so it'll be interesting to see if he can get some higher results and maybe take advantage of a good race too to get himself even higher still. But we'll have to see. And of course, Canapino lost the point scorers in 25th place. And after that, it's people who haven't scored, so the likes of Willis, Walker, Fuller, Foster, Weeks, and Halsema. So that is your standings looked at. So time to get a little bit interesting, because looking at the sort of field of people so far then, I know it's very early going in the season, but obviously we've got the likes of Muscat who have reserve drives in Super League. But is there anyone here for you, Mike, looking at the driver roster, who's really impressed but doesn't necessarily have a drive in Super League yet that could get one?
Oh, now you're asking. I mean, there was. I don't think is Siebel linked to a team anywhere. I'm not quite sure if he's actually been linked to anyone. He would stand out, obviously. But the other one that I think is quite solid, that if you were sort of mid-pack Super League at the moment, I suppose I'd be looking at somebody like Antonio Halanovic at Drake. Other than his last round, which was a little bit poor with a DNF. Otherwise, he's been solid. He'd be one that I'd think, come the end of the year, if I was looking to the year after, he'd be one I'd be keeping a good eye on. If you couldn't get some of the top guys that are probably already linked to certain teams. Somebody else to look out for if they do the rest of the year, is Mr. Ryan Walker, who just returned. He didn't score points, but did finish both races in his return. But you remember he was about 3 years ago battling for the Supercup title. With Hardwick and Ranieri, so he's got the talent if he does make the return permanent.
Yeah, of course, it's a completely different playing field off Factor 2 compared to off Factor, which Walker would have competed on. So it's obviously going to be difficult for him to adapt, but it is for anybody. And hopefully we'll see him back up in the higher echelons of Supercup soon. For me personally, I agree on Siebel. I don't think he is linked with any teams at the moment, so it would be a big surprised if he didn't get snapped up just from this sort of imperious form he's shown so far. But even the likes of drivers who have previously been linked with Super League teams like Whoopke Hoekster, and Whoopke is very capable in his own right. He actually had a managerial role, I think he might actually still do, be involved with Hawkeye Racing in some capacity. But Whoopke is definitely very capable and someone who you should consider for a Super League drive because, he gets the job done because Whoopke, and he just seems to be very capable in a variety of automobiles. He seems to be a very good all-rounder, and even the likes of Wright Kilke's only had one race, but he made a big splash with Enterprise GP last year and with Enterprise previously. So, put him in a Super League car, and it could actually turn out to be quite good.
Yeah, Wright definitely could be if he's the question mark always with him. I think is obviously his dedication by the looks of it. If he's only turning up certain races, is that his lifestyle and he can't do it, or is there a bit more to that there? Whoopke, of course, yes. I mean, we saw him all in the Indy Series, Atlantic, wasn't it? Doing particularly well there. He has driven, like you say, he's been managing at Hawkeye, but he did do 3 rounds last year at Super League as well. He scored a few points. I want to say a couple of finishes around sort of Germany time. So that was, he's obviously got the experience there to take that step if that's what he wants to do. But I think he's got a particularly good team with Mazurek who want to battle on and fight for titles. So I imagine he'll probably see out the year there. But yeah, they might even, if they do really well, he might get his team up. The team might go up and he might go up with them.
Yeah, he might go up with him, and it might obviously be that he does, and it would be interesting to see if he does, because he's very capable, of course. But obviously, lots of drivers in the field who might want a Super League drive in their own right. And well, the thing with Wright Kilke, I think he was only brought in as a reserve for 1 round anyway, but I'm sure he'd be very dedicated to championships. Now he's come back and he's got his mind refreshed. He's all like, I can do this, and we've seen how capable he is. So I'm sure that given the right circumstances, you would be seeing him pushing for the championships. And even looking at guys like Michael Barnard, I've not seen him for a while at GPVWC, but he's already getting impressed. He only raced at Russia. But if he can make enough of a splash in Supercup, perhaps we could see him in a reserve role. Or maybe in a race if he got lucky enough.
We could. Again, it's so early days. Particularly these guys we're saying here has come in and done 1 round. As a Super League manager, I'd be looking a lot more further down the season at those guys. At this stage, as a Super League manager, at the moment, really, you wouldn't want to be looking outside the top 10, probably there. I'd imagine at the moment would be the only ones I'd consider if I was in that task right now. It doesn't mean that we can't watch these guys over the coming weeks to see if they would have what it's got, really. Let's not forget, though, it's not all about getting up into Super League. There is the pride here of winning the Supercup. Like I said, there's been some fantastic people that have won this series and haven't moved on to Super League. And have gone on to different things or have felt that is absolutely enough for them.
Yeah, indeed. So, one more thing before we round out this particular episode of the Supercup show. Valencia up next, home of the Spanish Grand Prix. Hasn't actually held the Spanish Grand Prix for a very long time, and I don't think it has in Supercup history. So, this is going to be a very different experience. It's a street circuit. So, that sort of atmosphere, very similar to Sochi. So, with that in mind, Mike, have you got any early predictions for who might win it?
Wow. Well, it's a very different beast to what we've seen already. I suppose it's slightly more Australia-based, a bit street circuit-esque, but it's. I mean, you can't look past Sybil, can you? At the moment, I mean, I'd expect him to be right up there. But again, I quite like. Muscat's both wins have been in round race 2, so he's been quite a solid bet for a race 2 win. But out-and-out pace, I'd imagine that someone like Sybil and I quite like the idea Dennis Jordan maybe been up there this time as well.
Yeah, those drivers really could be up with it. And, well, for myself, I think, it's sort of similar to Australia, sort of similar to Sochi. So, I mean, I can't look past Sybil myself again. He's just 3 out of 4. Statistics don't lie. But then you look at the likes of Dino Paolini, who got a 2nd and a 3rd at Russia, and then another 2nd in China. I think if the conditions suit him, we might see Dino manage to get that elusive win so far this season.
Oh, definitely. It should be on the cards for him at some point this season. It's whether or not it happens this time round. Who knows? I mean, it'd be a pretty good thing if it did. Be another winner to our rankings already this year. It's all right.
But thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Supercup Show. That's all we got time for today, unfortunately. But thank you very much for listening again. And this is a very much work in progress sort of show. And as the season goes on, we'll hope to have some regular panelists involved and some interesting voices and opinions along the way. But I would like to thank Mike Pitman for joining me for the very first episode of this show. Thank you, Mike.
No worries, it's just been great to recap.
It has been, and from me and Mike Pitman here at SimNews.TV, it's goodbye and see you in 2 weeks' time.